Only working
One
on that.
second. One second.
You like?
Good evening and welcome to Trending Mind number 25. This evening's topic is the cinematic experience, movies and our mental well-being. Please like, share the broadcast, and we'll be back with you shortly. What is knowledge? And how much of it must we acquire in order to better our lives? What makes some forms of knowledge seemingly more advantageous than others? What fuels this desire to learn and to know and to understand? And how much of what we learn is actually applied to the bettering of our lives? Is it necessary to know in order to grow? Join us, a group of former Guyanese high schoolers and our special guests, as we chat about the things we need to know and about education and the process of learning in the tech age. This is The Trending Mind, Friday evenings at 7:30 Eastern Standard Time on Facebook and YouTube. Okay, we're back and we're gonna sort through a little opening question to get us rolling off. Renita, looking back on your own life's experiences and work, would you say that there was a time when it was to your benefit to count your chickens before they were hatched?
Sometimes.
Give us an example of a situation that is not personal.
Like going for a job or going to a track meet or something, you have to psych yourself up. You have to have a positive attitude. And sometimes you have to I believe in speaking things into existence. So people might call it counting your chicken before it's hatched, but no, it's just having a positive attitude, being confident in yourself and your ability, and just telling yourself, I got this. So some people might say, oh, you're counting your chicken before it's hatched, before they are hatched. But to me, no, that's in sports world, that's psyching yourself up. That's putting yourself in a positive frame of mind. In terms of a job interview, you're telling yourself, you got this. You're secure that you know the topic, you know the company, you know the industry, and you feel that you're the best candidate. And you have to tell yourself you're the best candidate in that case. You have to tell yourself you're number one in that sport or whatever. So I have been known to count my chickens before they're hatched. And that helped me to make sure that if all those chickens would come to fruition.
Okay. Interesting. Misha, what about you? Have you been fortunate counting your chickens before they hatch?
Yes, actually. I agree with Renita. I think that we should be positive. I think if I want something, I'm going to plan for it. And the only time I don't really think I count my chickens before they're hatched is when it has to do with someone else. Especially if I don't have enough faith in, or I don't know the person or I don't know the situation. But not in cases where the decision is probably based on let's say I'm going for a job. I'm still going to be positive about it. I'm still going to say I got this job, I mean, it may be dangerous, but I would even make some decisions based on what I know I want to have. So, I'll say I already know I'm going to be a superintendent very soon. So I start planning for what my vision for the district would be, and some of the things I would want and that kind of thing. So that's how I
Your take, Terence.
This is so first, the whole thing about counting the chickens before the hatch is that really we shouldn't depend on something that we hope for until we know for certain that this thing will happen. So, don't count the chickens before they hatch. And it is true that sometimes sometimes the chickens don't hatch. I mean, it's so there's a wisdom in being cautious, and not think. But I think, as both Renita and Michelle said, I think for us sometimes it's important for us to sort of speak it into existence. Sometimes it's important for us to kind of begin to act like we know this chicken is going to hatch, because in a way, when we do this, we bring the right things into play. So if we don't leave it to chance, we take every opportunity that's sort of there to do the things that are necessary to ensure that the chicken will hatch. So, I think it's this saying is a good saying. Don't count the chickens before they hatch. It has reality to it. Sometimes the eggs don't hatch, and we've all been in this situation. But I think what both Renita and Michelle are saying are extremely true, that if you don't anticipate that your chickens will hatch, then you're paralyzed. So you should always go into the situation, certainly on a personal sense, thinking that, okay, if this is the direction I'm going, I'm hoping the chickens will hatch, and I'll do everything to see that the chickens hatch. And so that's my take on that. I think one should be prudent, but one should also have the attitude and the disposition that says, this is where I'm going, and this is what I'd like to see happen. And I think oftentimes when we do that it actually works it works to our benefit.
Okay. I would like to think by this day and age, they should amend that. Don't count the chickens before they're hatched unless you have extra eggs. So if the first set does not hatch, because these were your plans, this was your method, this was your objective, this was your goal, and these were the steps that you took, your aim, your process, and it didn't work, and you understood what made you fail, then you use the next set of eggs and you set them and you avoid whatever made you fail in the first time.
That don't mean it won't fail again. It really doesn't mean it won't fail again.
No, but you always have backup eggs.
Yeah, you'll have backup eggs and you'll have a backup plan. I agree with that. But exactly. I believe that, there's some truth and some good to everything we've learned coming out from the British system, because that's the system I really know. But it's a very negative system. And it gives you a lot of reservations, and it doesn't really always speak positivity. Now, I'm not saying to follow blindly. There's always a level of discernment that you put into your decision making. There's always some thought that you put into your decision making. But when you believe in your heart this is going to happen, you work towards it and you make everything happen. Now, in the case of a chicken and an egg, I can't give life. So I'm not going to say, this person is going to be born or this person is going to live for however long. I don't have that ability. So if it comes to that type of thing, then fine. However, for me, I am going to speak into existence what I want. I'm going to work towards it. And if it fails, as Renita is trying to explain, then I'm going to find a different route. And if it fails again, I'm going to find another route, because the bottom line is, if I want to get from here to Long Island, even if there's an accident, I'm going to make a way to get there, you know? However, you're not going to run on an empty gas tank and say, you know what, I'm going to reach to Long Island under all circumstances, you know, because you might be left on the road. You're not going to know that you have no spare tire and you're going through a rugged and bumpy road. So that's the level of discernment and the process that you have to put in the thing. But
so in other words, we could count our chickens before they're hatched, depending on what it is, what the outcome we're expecting.
and what preparations we
In
have.
some cases, right? And contingency plans.
So if you didn't train for a race, you know, you might win, but you can't go in there with all confidence because you know you didn't do your best, right? But if
Right.
you know, I mean, how much training we used to do, but you know, with reference to what we used to do. But if you know, you put out your best and you watch them run before, you know them beating you. Yeah, I could bet on this race.
Know your opponents, right? Know your
Yeah.
audience. Yep.
And before we move on a side note, no, a parallel note, I should say, on that same subject, let's bring in the element of friendship and, you know, somebody who messed up along the way. Dr. Blackman, so you have this very good friend, you're in Guyana,
Mhm.
and you have this very good friend who got a visa to come to the US, and he said, you know, I go in, man, you need anything? And, you know, he sells you all his furniture, right? Of course, at a bargain price and thing, all right? He didn't tell you that it was just a visitor's visa. And of course, he did not quite predict that he was going to be sent back. So now he comes and he says, you know, Terrence, I think I'm going to need them furniture back. What do you do in that instant?
I have no idea. It depends on who the person is. You know, if it's a guy that I really know, and I understand now that he didn't really understand the full, you know, situation in terms of coming to the US and, you know, the possibility. You know, look, when I think when we all, I mean, I speak for myself. When I came to the US, I came in the late 1980s, and I was a student at Brooklyn College, and I don't think that we ever understood all of the ramifications of being an international student and all these kinds of things, and you know what that process would mean from going from an international student to being someone who was a permanent resident, and then to someone who was an American citizen. So I think that, you know, I would say to the person who comes back, depending upon, you know, my perception of who they are, you know, okay, I'll give you your thing back and, you know, give me my money back. Or B, look, you sold the thing and you've sold it and I own it, and now you can't come back. I mean, you can't ask me for this kind of sympathy. But I think it would depend on, to a large extent, the relationship that that I had with the individual who sold me, you know?
Right.
Yeah. I think it would largely
So,
because
Michelle, would you punish a friend for their counting their chickens before it was hatched?
No, I think you can see that we're all somewhat ambivalent about, you know, we all appreciate the warning, but as Michelle has sort of articulated, that there's a certain kind of, you know, negative association in which it kind of keeps you from being active in your destiny. You know, you sort of waiting, and we all see it in our lives where we want to do something, But we're saying, boy, let me wait and see what's going to happen tomorrow. First, let me get an answer from these people before we go to the next thing. When sometimes in this world that we're living in, we need to sort of, on faith, assume that we're going to get this and go to the next thing, because that's the path to success. So yeah, I wouldn't punish it. It would just depend on, the relationship that I had. Because I mean, we know what this has been for many of us, coming to the United States as international students, going through some process where we became, permanent residents, and later going through some process where we became citizens of the United States. So, that would be my, it would depend. If it's someone I like, I would say, boy, I this America's rough, and here's your thing back, and just give me my money back. If it's someone,
Michelle, when we come back in the fall, I think, I took note of what you said earlier with regard to, some of these things that we got from the British having this negative kind of feel, and I think maybe there's something there to really look at, what in some of those things may have actually held us back as against motivating us. All right. Okay, you're all locked into the Trending Mind. This is the Trending Mind 25. And today we want to look at movies and the experience of movies and their impact on our mental well-being. We'll be back with you shortly. All right. Michelle, I have to ask you a quick question before I go on. I have to check with you. You were a moviegoer, right?
No, I was wondering about that. No, I don't. I'm
Okay.
very reality driven.
Right. Okay. All right. But I know there's going to be stuff you're going to be able to add to the conversation.
Did you watch it on TV?
CNN News? Which? I mean, listen, I've been caught up in what's the thing you asked me to look at, Renee? Do you remember? I started looking at it, something with the royal family. I don't even remember.
The Crown.
The Crown. The Crown. And then I looked that series so quickly, and then I moved on to all the others that look similar, So there are things that catch your interest,
That would catch your Renita, looking back then, your school days and now, was there a difference in your mindset in going to a movie? Could you identify the reason why you went then, and if it differed from the reason why you would look at a movie today as an adult?
The first movie I went to, my dad took us. We went to see The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly by Clint Eastwood. So, yeah, my dad took us, and it was in Kitty. We lived in Kitty. We went to Hollywood. The movie theater was called Hollywood, and that was my first time I fell in love with Western movies. As I grow older, I realized that those movies kind of had us skewed, thinking that the Indians were always the bad people. But we never, because you didn't know the history that the Indians were actually the original people and was their land. They made it, they portrayed them as they were the ones who were occupying and they were the bad ones. And for when I became a teenager, the movies that I wanted to see was Saturday Night Fever, Roll a Boogie by Linda Blair, because those were all musicals, and we could kind of relate to those type of movies. To me, they were a form of relaxation from everything else that's going on in the world, and so I still look at movies. Once something good is recommended, I still look at good TV shows and movies, because to me it relaxes me and it takes me away from the harsh reality.
Mhm.
Dr. Blackman, did you find yourself having that kind of response where you were able to go into a movie theater or just watch a movie and be able to lose yourself in, for that 1.5 hour, for that 2 hours or so?
Yeah, I mean, I think movies for some of us, these movies and the cinemas were really really very important. As I was listening to Renita, I was thinking about the names of the various places. So now I'm just thinking, like Astor, Liberty,
Metropole, Globe,
Empire. There's one called Empire, right?
Right.
Empire,
That would be the Bollywood
Plaza,
movies.
Hollywood,
Globe, Metropole, Astor,
Metropole, Globe,
Hollywood.
Astor. Yeah, I remember. My very, very first job, the first thing that I ever worked at was at a movie theater in Kitty, and now I can't even remember what the name of the place is. Hollywood. Yeah. So my very first job in life was working at Hollywood, and I'd gone there. It was like one of the times when school was out, and I was looking to get some money to, buy tires from a bicycle or something. And you know how old people are. You gotta go and walk and do something. And I remember going there, and the guy who was running the place said, "Man, you gotta, so the job was to clean up the." I was so happy to get the job because then it would mean that you would be able to watch. You would be able to watch the movies for free. And the job was to clean up, sweep up the place, mop up the place. And I worked for 1 week. And then when I go to master, when I go for the pay for the week, the man said, "Well, there was a tryout." I'm a mother. I never forget that. My mother said, "These people, I didn't want you going back there, not a single day." So even though I like the movies, I have a certain sense about movie theaters and their business operation in Guyana, that they're exploitative. And that's just my own personal sense.
Right.
But that's my own personal experience. But I like the movie theaters. I mean, I think, like Renita just said, I mean, we would, it was joy to go. When you go with your family, you go to balcony, and then like as a kid on Camp Street, there was Plaza. Sometimes we would escape from schools and go into they had Pit. And Pit was like a place of just complete ruffians who would, it
was the place to go when you were, as we say, skulking.
Yeah. You
would go in Pit.
Yeah. There'd be some very dangerous.
My dad used to give my brother money on Saturdays for him to take us to the matinee.
Yeah.
And he would say, my sister and I, and my dad would say, take us in house. My brother would keep the money and take us in Pit.
Yeah.
And then you come out, you sit in Pit like this. Right? And then when you come out, the sun was so bright. It's like you get a instant headache because it was so dark in there.
Yeah.
And my brother was always an entrepreneur. He would take us in Pit and
take
keep the extra money.
money.
We
Yeah.
always tell him about that up to now. How you could take us in pit?
Yeah,
know?
well, that was the point. Pitt was a place for characters who like even the whole point was that, say for example, some movies would be adult films, meaning that they would have the rating of being, over 18 or now I can't remember, but the whole idea was be like there would be some guy at the door at the pit that would let people go in who might not have met the age if they went into house or balcony. Yeah.
No, as one of our viewers, David, is saying, you put a $2 on the ticket and you would let you pass.
Yes. Yeah. No, the movies. I mean, the movies in Guyana were a really important part of the culture. So, well, I mean, even for example, my grandmother lived in Alexander Village, and so there was one in Albistown called Rio. I don't know if you remember. If anyone
Rio, yeah.
Yeah, there was one called Rio, and they would have like lots of Indian, like Renita just talked about the Western. They would have lots of like Indian musical type things, right? So it's like if you went there, you would know like Amitabh Bachchan and
Dharmendra and company.
Dharmendra.
So the movies were a very important part of our life as I look back now.
Yeah.
They're very, 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 very important. I even remember, as we're talking about this, I mean, I even remember sort of, some of the Guyanese cinema, like two in particular I remember. There was a movie called Agro
Seasman.
And then there was one, like If Wishes Were Horses, or I don't know if the Habib
that's
Khan,
the title.
did I have the name right?
Yeah, Habib Khan.
Yeah. So the cinema was very, very important to us, And as Renita said, it sort of skewed our views on terms of like, now that we live in the United States, we realize how very mentally dominating those, Clint Eastwood and, the other thing which was very important was sort of like the biblical ones, Ben-Hur and
yes,
Ten Commandments
and so on. Yeah, these were really, and we come to sort of view these as like really big movies, Charles
Jesus Christ
Bronson.
Superstar.
Yeah. We come to view these as certain, but when we came to America and started to live in America, we realized that these movies had some stereotypes in them. Like I can't watch them now. I really, like occasionally I could watch a Western now, but I can't watch it with the same eye that I had.
Right. Magnificent Seven. Yep.
Yeah, as a child at Globe or Strand or Plaza or some one of these places.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Michelle, let me get Michelle here. We're running away. Leave Michelle.
Yeah, well, Michelle she missed out on important things.
Ask her from the British point of view. Because I made her watch The Crown.
Michelle, Antoine, our mental health specialist, he sent a little note. In addition to saying, he wouldn't be able to make it, but he spoke to the bonding, the social bonding that would have resulted from these movies, because oftentimes we would go with company to the movie theater, and then after, whether it was at school or whether it was in the village or whatever area you lived in, we would gather and, you always had a few people who practice their storytelling, from, telling you what went on, at the movie and, showing you all the actions and, and so on. Even though you said, you weren't necessarily a cinema goer, but were you privy in any way to the bonds, were you privy to these types of conversations where your friends would gather around, to talk about the movie that they would have seen over the weekend? Were you ever aware or conscious of that happening?
Yes. Yes, I was. And also, when I read the topic about 15 minutes ago, I said, well, thank God I helped my son prepare for this research paper he had to do, because he was looking at the impact of movies, So sometimes when you want to read over the stuff for him, you get a lot of the research that comes behind movies. And one of the good in looking at movies is the kind of bonding and the enacting of a character. If it is a love movie, or if it is, any one of them, but you tend to see yourself in some one of the characters. And if you see yourself in one of the characters, you tend to empathize with them. And then you tend to show that emotion that you may not show normally. So let's say my boyfriend just broke up with me, and maybe I'm looking at a movie where this girl is treated in a particular manner, and I couldn't cry for my friends to know my heart is breaking, but now I empathize with her, and now I get the opportunity to really express that emotion among my friends under the pretext that I am now looking at the feeling that I'm feeling for this character in the movie. In addition, when you leave the movie, because visualization is a form of learning and a form of remembering things, you also remember the story. And some people, of course, they come back out and they give you the whole rundown of the movie. It also sharpens those skills for some students in terms of literature, in terms of writing a play, this type of thing. So yes, I know the corners, I know the little areas where people would get to speak about a movie. And I mean, I would listen because, of course, I didn't see the movie. I don't really want to look at the movie anyway, but I don't mind hearing the story behind the movie, so I'll hear it. So yes, it does form a type of socialization. But I say what is good is also bad.
Okay.
Because just as how we will enact or we will put ourselves in the character of a person who is loving or who has broken someone's heart, if this is the character or the type of person that you perceive yourself to be, it gives you an idea of what you should do. So yes, there are people who would pick up guns because they identify with that bad man. I'm going to step to you like this, and I'm going to do this, and I'm going to do that, and then they commit things or they do things that they didn't really think about. So it's very parallel to singing certain songs. You play it over and over in your brain, and you tend to normalize something that is not necessarily normal. And so you act on it, So there's good and there's bad.
All right. We'll come back, to that that aspect of it. But Dr. Blackman, do you have anything to add to the whole issue of the bonding?
No, I think it was a critical thing. I mean, it's like if we look back on our lives, so I'm speaking out specifically to the Guyana context. I mean, most of us, our first date had to do with taking the young woman with whom you had some interest to the movies, and that was like the thing. And then you just talk about the people acting out, and I was thinking about one of the genres that was of vital importance to us was these Chinese movies, so everyone knows Wang Yu and Silver Fox and Bolo and other yeah. It was, these things became sort of like tropes that people could point to and say, like, this individual is like Wang Yu, or this individual is Bolo, or this individual is Silver Fox, or and so on. Yeah,
don't forget Kachar now.
Kachar, the whole night. So yeah, I mean, it's interesting. It's an interesting topic. It's just to see how much of our and I think there's a bit of seriousness here, right? So there's much of our psyche that has been shaped by these films, and much of how we respond to the world, and as Michelle just said, like how we identify individual with these various characters. And in a sense, we were not the people who were making these characters, So, I always remember like the Charles Bronson films, right? The ones where he was like a vigilante.
Death Wish.
Death Wish, yeah. And so there is Charles Bronson, and he's killing people who are bad people somewhere in the urban United States. And then finally, I come to the United States, and I'm part of this urban setup. And in a way, I when I looked at that again, I could never see it in the same way, right? So I mean, but it showed me the power of telling stories. The power of telling your story and having that be the dominant narrative about what's going on, and that's important. One of our Caribbean intellectuals, Rex Nettleford, who I think spent some time at the University of Guyana. I mean, he has a thing. He says like, well, look, if you don't find the time to document your own history, it's likely to be forgotten, and perhaps worse still, it's going to be misrepresented. And I think that this business of the arts and teaching our young people to write and teaching our young people to see for themselves what the story is, and to be able to express their own emotion and their own story, and to be able to center their story as the priority in the narrative, I think is a very, very important thing. And this topic that you're describing, that you've asked us to think about, is something about that. Like, we saw ourselves in stories that were not made by us, right? So we all identified with Charles Bronson. We all identified with Clint Eastwood. We all identified with, Ben
Sidney
Hur.
Poitier, To Sir with Love.
Well, actually, it was better, right? Sidney. What was the one with Sidney Poitier?
To Sir with Love.
To Sir with Love, right? So that was a good identification. E.R. Braffit's To Sir with Love. Yeah, we all identified with Sidney Poitier being a teacher, teaching these kids in England. So the power of, I think that's the thing to see, that those things were very, very powerful. Actually, just I tangent. I was just very disappointed that at some point I went home and I walked around there, somewhere where, these theaters were, and they were all gone. Yeah, I actually went to a movie theater at a mall someplace in, I don't know whether, someone should say.
I think that's the Giftland Mall, right?
The Giftland Mall, yes.
Yeah,
I went to a movie theater at the Giftland.
Yeah, they have a modern day movie theater.
Yeah, they have it was a radically different experience. It was nothing like the experience that we drove a car, parked it in the parking lot, and went into the mall, and then bought a ticket for a movie theater, and it looked very much like the American movie theaters, and just as noisy, and the seats were the same. And I thought, this is not Globe, this is not Astor, this is not Strand, this is not So we've lost something. But I don't know that anyone was thinking about this.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. Michelle, you started to touch on some of the negative aspects, in some of the ways we can be negatively influenced by movie. Before we go there, you were saying you recently looked at The Crown, a series that was recommended to you by Renita. Now, in looking, as you found yourself, what was it relaxation, what good did you find that it did for your mind as you look at it, and as you who are not a typical moviegoer?
Okay, before she speaks, let me tell you why I told her to watch it. After the interview with Harry and Meghan, right?
Yeah.
And there's a lot of things that people were saying was not possible and was in doubt. And I said, if you watch The Crown, it will fill in all of the blanks. And she went ahead and
No. I had watched. You told me about it before. When that came out, we were both on the same side. With
Right.
like we could figure out that she wasn't really lying.
Right.
So for the positive, it was relaxing. Of course, I finished it, so it had to be relaxing, and it also kept me up a few hours looking at a few series and going into the morning and realizing I have to at least get 3 hours of sleep before I begin my day.
Right.
That can be the negative part of it, right? But it is intriguing, and you follow a character, you fall in love with a character, I loved Francis, that's the one with Francis when he died and it came through the air. And so because I looked at so many after then, I kept following them, trying to figure out, more and more. I wanted to know more about it. Right. So when they beheaded Queen Mary, and so, that I loved her so much, and it really hurt me. So I can see, where you can fall in love with someone, feel sympathy for someone, someone that you think did the right thing all their life and you didn't like, outcome. But it was relaxing all in all,
And then you realize why these people are the way they are, and they believe in lynching and beheading, and if you don't agree with them, or you're not their kind, or you're not royalty, and stuff like that, and the things that they did, if they had imperfect family members,
it was so imperfect.
They would lock them away and get death certificates for them because they weren't representative of the royal family. It was very enlightening. It peeled away so many layers of that I had, and it filled in so many blanks, so it was interesting.
So made you see religion as an organization.
Yep. Especially, and where it came from and how they wanted you to practice a particular religion that they focused on, and anybody who didn't follow was considered a heretic. It was interesting. It was very interesting.
Okay. We're going to take a short break, and we'll be back. We're discussing the movies and our minds. Okay, I have a question for the educators. I'll start with you, Terence. Is it okay, in your view, a student looks up at you and says, either they want to become a teacher because they would have looked at Sidney Poitier's performance in, E.R. Braffitt's To Serve with Love, and they've decided that because of that, they would like to go and teach in, a troubled section of the city, or they would have watched Clint Eastwood in Magnum Force and decided, hey, they want to be a cop. They want to move like Clint. Is there anything wrong in a young person being influenced in their career choice by the movies?
No, actually, I think that's part of what I was saying earlier, that these films and the stories that they tell, we resonate with them in some particular ways, and we resonate with some characters, and that's a good thing, right? So, if one finds resonance with Sidney Poitier in To Sir with Love, it suggests that there's something in you that kind of aligns with that experience, and maybe that's your way of being told that this is something that you should explore. I mean, I remember watching you. There's a movie with a guy named Olmos, who it's about some students in California, some Hispanic students in California who scored well on the SAT exams in math because they had this
stand and deliver.
Stand and Deliver, right? And is it Stand and maybe it's Stand and Deliver? I think that's the name.
Yeah.
Or Stand and Deliver is the one with the guy in New Jersey.
No,
Anyway,
Lean on Me.
Lean on Me.
Yeah, Lean on Me is the one in the
That's
guy.
Clark. That was Clark.
Will Clark. Yeah. So I think I think these movies are about they communicate to us values that are important, and they show us characters who live those values and the consequences of living those values. And I think sometimes those are the things that resonate with us. So I really do believe.
You remember Akilah and the Bee?
Yeah, the one with the young lady who was doing the spelling bee competition. Yeah. Those things resonate with us, and they inspire us in some ways. I mean, I think that's the function of this, these movies, and broadly the function of art, right? It inspires us to think about who we are and what we can be. And so in a way, this is part of what the trick in your question is about the movies and sort of our mind, right? Because then sometimes the inspiration that we get tells us that we should be something that we're not.
Yeah.
And that kind of puts us in there's a and that's why, I mean, maybe look, we all watched a young man from Howard who died recently. That's the last movie I've actually gone to the theater.
Oh, the Panther?
The Black Panther movies, right? We all watched that. I mean, and let's say
what is Black Panther? I'm on Jeopardy.
Yeah. I mean, okay, so it's not the greatest story, but I mean, it was a
feel good,
inspiring thing, right? And young people who watched that,
feel good.
I'd be happy if they came out the theater and said, I want to be a Black Panther, right? And so I think that this is the function of art, right? It's to inspire us and to tell us what we can be and to give us a sense of possibilities about what we can be. And I very much encourage it. Yeah.
Okay. Michelle, your take. What do you say to a student, who would have been inspired to be a teacher after watching Sidney Poitier, or they want to be a cop after watching Clint Eastwood?
So I'm going to try to answer that question with fidelity, because I'm going to hope that Clint Eastwood was a good cop and he was not a bad cop. And I would hope that
he was a cop who did things his way.
Yeah. You exactly. I mean, not the cop, but
that wasn't the one with Make My Day, right? That was
that was one of them. Part of the Dirty Harry series.
Yeah.
Okay. So thank you for that explanation.
The kind of cop that we would know. If he had a body camera on, we would be looking at jail Clint Eastwood in this movie.
Okay. So now that's where the issue comes into play. So I'm thinking, Sidney Poitier, probably that would work. I like Coach Carter. There's some issues with Coach Carter, but I did watch at Coach Carter, and I did, see myself in some ways with, he did some things that my mom did as a principal and that I do. um Joe Clark, I see where he got blamed. I see his results, just like the guy from Boys and Girls,
Yeah, that's
right.
yeah.
So if you can see the good in these characters and take that and want to go into the profession for that, then that's a good thing. But if the anger portrayed by some of these persons, or the crimes that they may commit and get away with, is what intrigues you to become involved in that, then you may be getting yourself into trouble. So if a child comes to me and says, I want to be like Clint Eastwood,
I want to be like Clint.
right, I would say, great. What inspires you to be like Clint? Why do you want to become a cop? What is it about being a cop? What do you think the role of a cop is? And if they say, I'm gonna make money and I'm gonna do this, I'm gonna be able, then I'm gonna tell them, no, that's not the role of a cop. If the role of a teacher is to bully kids and to just treat kids a particular way, and you don't respect the voice of the child, then no, that's not the right reason to go into a career. But if you want to save and form lives, then good. So there's some good and some bad. By the same way, if a man is looking at a movie or a woman where a female is being abused, and then, like this one, I started that book and I couldn't finish it, where the guy would tie the girl up and everybody was going crazy over that book. I think it's something gray or
Shades of Grey.
Shades of Grey. I mean, to me, that's just horrible and abusive and ridiculous.
Yeah, it wasn't my
get that.
cup of
Right.
tea. Yeah.
And there will be women who think that, this is a great thing for someone to treat me like this, right? And hey, to each his own, but to me, that's not something I would want to formulate in a young child, to get a young child to feel that way, right? So it just depends on what the child is taking from the movie and how you as an adult can caution it. But good things can come out of it. There's good and there's bad.
No, I hear you. I mean, I think I was just the memory just came to me, like in the movie with Clint Eastwood. He goes like, "Go ahead, punk, make my day," and he's gonna shoot someone and dead, right? And see, to me, this is okay. In Guyana, if I'm watching this at Globe, it seems like a good thing, right? These are bad guys, but then once I've traveled to America in 1988, and I live in Brooklyn, and I live in East New York, and I understand some of the dynamics, then this doesn't make the same kind of sense that it made to me. It made to me when I was a 13, 14-year-old.
I was even looking at the ad just now, and not for nothing, I looked at it and it caught my attention. The yellow blouse of the black woman on there. Yeah. And I started to look now to see how other females were portrayed. And I started to look at how many of them have guns and how they pose with their guns and what they did with their guns, because I'm really looking to see what the minority child is seeing, what they are, how are they being portrayed, and are they shown as being successful? Are they shown as being respectful? If every movie it's an abuse, it looks like, if you're of this race, this is what you should expect. And so subtle things like that, they put into these movies, and automatically you begin to feel a particular way. You begin to feel as though, this is how I am. So I got to roll up on you like this. I got to do this kind of thing, because what else do you expect from me? I'm Black,
Well,
So
we create those movies ourselves about us.
Sometimes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Sometimes, but
we
what?
Create those movies about ourselves.
No, not all the time, We want money. A lot of times, I don't want to judge them, because, a lot of these people came up in in eras where they didn't have money and funding, right? And the man with the money, you know, a lot of them were robbed, and a lot of them made these songs and these movies, but they weren't really paid the money they should have been paid for what, you know, what they did. But they did it because that was food on the table. And for us who are in a little better position, the moral of the story is we should never revert back to that position. You know, we should always look in a different direction, because it was rough. You know, they had the drug trade, and they were pushing movies into the pushing drugs into these areas. So they want a little crack, and that was what was happening. And so they're getting a little money off of it, you know. But it's not they making the movies. They're being paid.
So what about the rappers, the music that the rappers are making and the videos?
At this point in time, we can move away from that. But how many rappers are paid by someone who looks like themselves? Look at even Michael Jackson. What was the end result of him? Look at most of them. They don't have a say. As soon as they say something, they either strung out in drugs, they die. It's just coincidental.
All right, that's another big topic. But
Yes,
I want to go back to something that, you know, as Michelle was speaking just now, in terms of how do we communicate to our children. Now, we know that back in the day, some of the movies that our parents would have seen, there was no way that we were going to get to see them. All right. A few of us may have been lucky to be able to, you know, hand a tube up to a guy at Pit and Pass too. But even some of the gatekeepers at Pit were very strict when it came to adults only movies. Now we living in an era now where it's open season, all right, and you know the phrase "adults only" seems now redundant, right? It has no merit, it has no meaning, all right. So Renita, now you may have looked at something like Power and enjoyed the series Power, you know, well written, well acted, and it's quite likely that, you know, your daughters, you know, would have, you know, liked it too, and you know, you may have had discussions with them about, you know, about the characters and who you like, and you know, where would your mind go though if your daughter says to you after looking at Power, you know, that she wants a guy like Ghost? Where does that take your mind as a parent?
I would ask her if she's sure she knows what she's doing. You know, I don't know if guys like Ghost exist in real life, can be that successful in real life, because to me they'll always be targeted and pulled down before they even get to that level. But I would ask her and said, are you going because of the lifestyle, or are you going because of you're interested in the person, you know? And I would have to make some tough decisions, because I really wouldn't want any interaction or anything to do with somebody in that line of work. So I would tell her how I feel, tell her, you know, look and see the longevity of those people, the success of those people, and how they live. To me, they're unable to sleep at night. They're unable to really live a good life. They're always looking behind their shoulders. They're always having to move. They always have to be disguised. And the children could be targets, you know. So I would explain all of that to her. And then if she wants to make that decision, you know, then that would be up to her. But I would have to exercise some tough love and probably would not want to visit them and stuff like that.
Okay. Terrence, on that same note, now art and movies, movies are is a form of art. They can be very powerful. Now, like you would know, sometimes you might know, okay, we know that stealing is bad. But you may go to a movie and you, because of the way the guy acts, the way he allows himself to be absorbed by the role, you just like how they do it. And then you're influenced by that. How would you advise a youngster being influenced in that way, but by a very negative character?
Yeah, it's difficult. I mean, you can think of a number of. I mean, I don't know if you guys have ever watched the series The Wire. Have you ever watched the series The Wire?
Yeah, I'm familiar with The Wire.
Yeah, you should watch. So there are many of the characters in The Wire are drug dealers, bad police officers, so on. I mean, there's a whole series of characters who are all flawed in some way. But I think that you come to like some of these characters because of some qualities that you see in them, right? So I think that as the question you asked about how you deal with your kids in this context. I mean, I just to be completely honest. I mean, I have not had any conversations with my kids about movies, characters. I mean, for all I know, my daughter is 14 years old. She's watching whatever she wants to watch. My son is he'll be 24. So she's 14, 24. He has always watched whatever he wants to watch from the time. I mean, the point is, these kids, you give them a computer, you've essentially opened up the world to them, right? You can't now. So what you would hope is that, and this is where I think sometimes, I have to be honest. I mean, I think this is where sometimes we are not as, not as effective parents as we hesitate to make some assertion about what we think, our kid, like if you ask me, do I make a decision about what my children look at on their computer? I don't actually. I mean, on the computer, I don't check it. I mean, I've tried to create an environment in which I think but who knows what kind of crazy stuff they're watching at, right? And they are watching at some crazy stuff. That, it's like the nature of being a kid that they will find the craziest stuff to watch at, and somehow they will find people who they want to emulate in that crazy stuff. All you hope is that it doesn't bubble out beyond what is. But if I'm honest, I will say that I haven't.
So far, I'm lucky. They like Grey's Anatomy and this stuff.
That's what you know that they like.
Right, exactly.
Because I'm always, I am a nosy mother. I'm always, what are you doing?
The stricter the government, the wiser the population.
So you know why? Because I was not really policed.
Yeah.
So I know what I got away with. So
you're policing in a very serious
I
way.
don't really police. I try to like I want to engage them in conversation. Oh, so they don't tell us what happened and stuff like that. So
no, I mean that's.
But they're grown, the phase that Terrence is really referring to is that teenage phase when they're really inquisitive.
Mm-hmm.
Since then, I kind of was guiding them what to.
I'm saying,
my TV had parental controls and codes and stuff. So if they did it elsewhere, that's them. But it was,
No, I did all of that. Okay, I did all of that. It doesn't work. I had the phone that you track them. I remember pulling up to Prospect Park because I tracked the phone, and they're coming out with a group of friends. You're waiting there to see. You do but so much, and then after you recognize how many. What was the thing they had first before Facebook that you had to go on and
MySpace.
MySpace, yes,
MySpace.
and she's 14, 13, and I remember writing to anyone who talks to my daughter. She is 13 years old. How dare her make a profile and say she's whatever? But
No, I think this is, I think this is a challenge. I think these are the things, like, if Guyanese Americans were, if we could have, like a different kind of community, right? So this would be the kind of thing where in a church or in some community thing, you would say people who just moved to America, and okay, here is how you can kind of begin to have a different view about how you do discipline for your children, so that you warn them of, because our people, I mean, they start to scream, and then the whole thing goes south. And so, and then if they don't scream, they just say, okay, you do what you want, and they just leave it without any guidance, so that the children are in it without ever kind of. That's a very and I don't say this as someone who has any real answer to it. I mean, I just feel like I don't have an answer. To be completely honest. I mean, if I think about my own child rearing experiences, I have two children, a son and daughter. They're 10 years apart, and I did pretty much the same thing 10 years later.
Same here, 10 years apart. Yeah.
If I'm honest, I did exactly the same thing 10 years later, and I didn't learn enough to be able to sort of figure out how to be better at having a conversation, and I think these are skills that you learn from people who have these things, and sometimes this is what I'm saying. Like, sometimes we don't really even know how to humble ourselves to be able to sort of learn from people who can explain to us, here is how you should be managing media for your kids. That's like a real topic in an American context, right? Here's how you should be doing that. Here's how you should be, how many hours of TV, how many hours of Facebook, how many hours of whatever. But once you give them the computer, it's hard to police it. Okay,
let's take a step back into strictly the cinematic universe. Stay with you a little, Terrence. Given the fact that there is no film industry in Guyana, so we don't have the ability, the means to tell our own stories. What do you think that void, that total absence of an industry, what are the consequences of that in your view?
Well, I think it's what we've been discussing. The absence of a narrative that puts you at the center. I mean, it's just like when, someone mentioned the Agro Seaman film. I mean, we went bonkers to see this film. This was maybe in the, early mid 70s, and everyone wanted to see it. And now I can't even remember what it is, but I remember this name, Agro Seaman. And I remember that there were characters who were characters that were people that we identified with in some normal way. So I think that's the issue. The issue is, the importance of having a it's like you see in India, there's Bollywood, and emerging in Nigeria, there's a Nollywood, and there are all of these things that are emerging that go to telling your story. I think telling your story in the way that you think it is very important, and for a large number of people in the world, they're not the people who are telling their story, and so people view them through their, and even and I'll say this, even the people themselves view themselves through the lens that someone else puts to them.
Right.
Yeah, so it's not only like other people viewing you in a particular way. You start to view your own self in a particular way, right? And I think that's deeply problematic. I mean, I was remembering, I don't know, some months ago, like earlier in the year, there was a group called I think they were called Guyanese Diaspora Incorporated, and they did like a video challenge competition, and it was to sort of, it was to kind of say, well, the challenge was to sort of say, well, make a video to say, what do you think we should do in Guyana? And I remember participating as so I participated. So I don't know if the people who did this video competition even said who the judges were or something. I did this anonymously, so I'm still doing it anonymously, even though I'm saying it here. I did this anonymously as participating as a judge in this competition. This is a video challenge competition, and run by this group, Guyanese in diaspora. And the winning video for me in this competition was a video by a young person saying what they wanted to do was to go to Guyana and make film and do videos and do them from inside out for Guyana. So what you're saying is something that I've actually thought about some. And I do believe in a very, very real way that if I had a bit of money to spend, I would spend it on, developing this, cinematic industry in a Guyanese context. I mean, it's not going to be Hollywood or Nollywood or, but it could be a really nice small thing that sort of centers Guyanese stories at the center of the thing. Because I think that's important, to be able to see yourself in an appropriate way, as we've been discussing. I mean,
right.
I'm not Charles Bronson. I'm not Clint Eastwood. I'm not Ben-Hur. I'm not, all of these various people. But we grew up to believe, I'm not Wang Yu. I'm not Silver Fox. I'm not Bolo. I'm not any of these people. We in a way, we grew up to believe that we were these people. We identified with these people when we went to if you remember. So I mean, we literally be cheering in the movie theater.
Cleopatra, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, we like applause. And again, I don't think that this is bad, right? I just think that, this was at 13. At 52, I have a different thought about.
We applaud for the Panther, the Black Panther. So
yeah. Well, I think I would like us to applaud things that are more appropriate for us to applaud. I don't know how that sounds. Like, I have to ask them. I have to ask Dr. Luard.
I want to go to Michelle. Michelle, yeah. I know. Okay, you know, like you've admitted, you weren't a big cinema fan. Didn't really go to the movies, but being somebody who's very socially aware, culturally conscious, what is your takeaway about the absence of cinema in Guyana, the means to tell our own stories? Where do you think that leaves us?
You want me to answer that question, right?
Yes.
You sure?
Well, yes.
Go ahead.
All right. Okay. The views expressed are my views. Let me just say that, and has nothing to do with this program. So, I think the plight of Guyana right now is the fact that we don't have our story told, especially the story from 1960 to 1992. I think the movies that were shown in Guyana has removed the consciousness, has removed the spirit of my ancestors from future generations in Guyana. I believe that there were a lot of movies shown with Indian characters that people who looked like them identified with them and felt a level of consciousness, and a level of people who looked like them identified with them and felt a level of consciousness, and a level of people.
Michelle, are you there with us? I think you're freezing.
You've just muted yourself.
Is it better now?
Yeah, we can.
I can hear you now. Yeah.
Okay. So I don't know where I got lost, but I felt like it was repeating. I'm saying that the movies that were shown in Guyana had us identifying with people who didn't really look like us, who didn't really say our stories, who didn't really tell our ancestors what our ancestors went through. And for the other persons who occupy the same land with us in Guyana, they had their stories told and they could identify with those stories. So I think that gap that we're seeing right now with the level of consciousness and being proud of who you are and being able to stand up and represent yourself for who you are in Guyana when you look like me, I think it's because our story is not told. And so in a nutshell, I feel that we need to really chronicle that story and chronicle it quickly. Persons like yourself, Andy, we need to write those stories and write it from a positive viewpoint. Because if we don't, we will have a very lost country for students, for people who look like us.
Okay, point taken. We need anything that you would like to add.
I agree. At least a if not a movie, at least a documentary. You know, because when I was a kid, a youngster, a teenager, I knew about LFS and how he empowered everyone, not just one race. All the races to feed, clothe, and house themselves. That saying resonated so much with us. He made education affordable, not just for one race, for Guyanese, you know? So those things, and even though I know in the 60s, there were some kind of harsh, brutal times, but in the beginning, him and Jagan were friends, and they worked together to advance Guyana. You know, so that story need to be told. Those things need to be told. Where we are today is not how we started once we got independence, and that fact need to be documented and told. So if a movie could be made, you know, with honestly portraying and telling the story of Guyana and her independence, Guyana, the early years, Guyana in the 60s to, like she said, 1992. You know, we did have the period when we had all the burning and the different things happening in Linden and in Berbice and all the other areas. Don't leave anything out, because knowing your past is what makes your future, you know, make your future a little better, because you don't want to repeat. You should not be repeating the negative things that occurred in the past. We should just be building and improving and continuously, not going backwards or marking time, as we would say, depending on which party is in power. You know, if this party get in power, then you find this occurring. If that party get in power, then you find that occurring. In 2021, that is ridiculous. We're Guyanese. We should be improving and advancing together, regardless. I'm not going to say color, regardless of race, because there are people who are of different race that are darker than I am, and I don't know what they think, what they're thinking, because when they go outside, you're black with straight hair. So to me, that movie needs to be told. That history needs to be told, you know. And it seems like wherever we go, all over the world, the real story of being black, being African, being whatever is not being told. We're just seeing mostly, this is my view, mostly the negative sides. We're not seeing a lot of the positive sides. And when only Black History Month in February, we of ourselves going to post, oh, we did this, we did that. That should be a continuum. Everybody else drum their history into us. Why can't we drum our own history into ourselves? So that needs to be done. Why is there a silence?
Yeah, I was about to say this movie thing went to its logical conclusion, and you guys were kind of stunned where it ended up, but it is true. I mean, I think what Michelle and Renita both articulated is it's very important. You have to be able to say, you have to be able to tell your stories, and when you don't tell your stories, then someone else tells it for you, and you're left with these sort of distorted stereotypes about who you are, and that is a challenge in Guyana, and that is also a challenge here in the United States, and I think not a challenge for people of African descent in Guyana and in the United States, and I think that. The point I would make, and the point I would strongly make, is that, these things don't resolve themselves by themselves. And so we have to encourage young people to write essays, to write stories, to write, poems, to look at themselves from the inside out. And to speak to their own experience, to look at their own mother and their own, I've many years ago, people talk about Black History Month and so on, and I just noticed one of the comments, about, sort of Black people's own sort of engagement with their Africanness, and how sometimes that's kind of challenging for us. I often remember. Sort of, at the time, as Renita just talked about Black History Month, saying, okay, in Black History Month, let's talk about our mother and father, and our grandmothers and grandfathers, and just immediately the people who are around you, and let's embrace that in the story, right? And you could not believe the amount of, everyone wanted to say. Have a discussion about, the Africans who built the pyramids, thousands of years ago, and they didn't want to have a discussion about the challenges that their grandmothers and grandfathers faced or their mothers and fathers faced in 1963 or 64 or whatever the year in Guyana. So I think that's sort of what we have to be able to, when you seek the sort of knowledge of self, and I want to emphasize that this is not original to me, because as I'm speaking, I'm reflecting on Antoine saying this exactly here in this program about how we often we don't know our story, and we often wonder, like, why are we drinking ourselves into death? Why are we doing the things that we do? And part of that has to do with the fact that we have not, in a very real way, embraced, even acknowledged, even explored our own histories. Like,
Right.
my name is Terrence Blackman. My father's, and we know this even when we sit with our parents and we have a conversation with them. They why will you want to know the for? And it goes away. And so we have kind of created a culture in which, and we do it too. I mean, we have children. How often do we actually sit down with our children and tell them the real story of their parents, coming to America and how they got to, we don't. And that's all that's about learning how to do. And we have to, in a way, again, I think, and I say this in a way, again, these are skills to be learned. You see, and we have to admit that we don't know. So we don't even know in this moment how to sit down with our own children and tell them who we are. Right? We don't. We
have
haven't
to
done.
do transformations, Terrence. We have to get to that point, and that's where, I think my work is. That's my next chapter. Getting people to understand and transform their lives. We have to begin to love ourselves and be proud of what shaped us. Tell the story from where we know it. There's nothing to hide about it. And just love who you are. The issue with us, we've seen so much bad. We need a purge from all these things that we've seen. So we don't want to identify with what is bad. And it's not because we're bad people. It's because we actually want to be good. So we're trying to run away from ourselves because ourselves, we were told we're bad for so long, And, with that being said, I really think that, yes, in those groups that you spoke about earlier, that's what we need to do, right? That's where we need to come together and really have conversations about, where is my pain? Where is my hurt? What am I holding on to? And believe me, if you let that go, it doesn't matter if they took that story and it was a feel-good story for them, so they ran with it. It doesn't matter, because you will feel so free. Let them take your burden and carry it around. It doesn't matter.
So when Terrence mentioned that we have to encourage the children, we have to start, because if our children start, they're starting at their point. But we have to start. And growing up, that nonsense about children should be seen and not heard. And when we ask the questions, why you want to know that? That in retrospect, that was so backward. You want to know your history. You want to know where we come from, who your family is. And in Guyana, we have this tendency to hide stuff, right? I mean, that's a whole nother topic. And they get pregnant in Georgetown, and they go on to the country to get the baby.
Yeah, the baby grows up, and the baby is
they're bringing you up, and you calling them auntie, but it's your mom, and stuff like that. So that's what I'm saying. As Michelle said, we are not happy about. We are not comfortable with who we are. We're not comfortable with our stories, because we figure that society will ridicule and look down and run with it. But it is your story. And without that story, that platform, you would not be who you are today. So we can't start from the kids. We have to start with us.
Well, that's the thing, Andy. Tonight, I will encourage everyone to start a diary and to actually write honestly about themselves first, for themselves privately, and then they can go in whatever direction.
Yeah. I mean, it was a lot.
DNA test.
Go ahead.
and do that DNA test, because you know a lot of times there's a lot to, I didn't want to do it, but there's a lot that you can find, and you can find a lot of connections in your families, things that you may not know, you will be able to uncover. So take the test. And if, you know, every member of your family, because everybody was auntie and uncle for us, and they may not have been to, you know. So you can also figure that out. There's good and there's bad in uncovering it. But if we really want to know who we are, we really have to do the work.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a whole big scene. I mean, I do agree. It is extremely important, you know, and you know, I think genealogy, as it pertains to us as Guyanese, is something very important to deal with. You know, like Renita was saying, talking about, you know, the people who get pregnant in tongue, go out, come back, and that baby. A lot of times, a separate identity is created for the offspring. It's either a brother as against the person's son. It's either a cousin or you know, and that has led to a lot of things. I mean, you know, we sitting here, you know, we don't know, you know, we could be related. You know, Terrence could be, you know, my first cousin. Who knows? I mean, that's Guyana's story, you know, right there, right? So yeah, you know, we do need to explore these things, and I think one thing we got from tonight is that it's very important for us to begin looking at ways to tell our own stories, right? Yeah, so I think it's a good note to end that. I think it's a good note to close off. So maybe by the time we get back after the summer's done, in the early fall, we could be actually discussing ways in which we
Well, so that's the thing. Let's all take the DNA tests, and so we can come back in the first show in the fall, and we can talk about our DNA
and talk about our DNA.
Yes,
Yeah,
yes. Let's do that.
Very good idea.
That's a good idea.
That should be interesting.
Reach out to 23andMe or whichever service. So someone send around a link. See what service.
You know, there's hesitancy about that because people are not trusting as to what they're doing with your DNA, what database they're putting it in.
Yeah, and Tom brought that up there.
So that's where the hesitancy is, you know. So
yeah, but if you ever did blood work anywhere, your DNA is out there. So you know, just stop. You did a urine test, your DNA is out there. You ever spit anywhere, your DNA is out there. So don't ever think. As a matter of fact, if you're walking down the road in New York City, you're being tracked, okay? If you have a cell phone, we know exactly where you are right now.
Facial recognition.
You. Yes.
Yeah,
so
facial recognition and stuff like that. I know.
If someone wants you, they'll get you.
Yeah.
All right.
I'm not talking about me. I'm not talking about me. Yeah. Yeah, I'm not talking about me. I'm talking about generally. That's one of the the drawbacks. Yep.
Okay, Renita, please close us out.
Okay, guys. Dr. Blackman, Dr. Luard, thank you so much for spending your Friday night with us. All our
thank you.
Regulars and first-time viewers and participants, thank you for spending your Friday night with us. Those who have been spending your Friday nights with us from the time we started Trending Minds, we thank you. We appreciate your accompanying us, your comments. Thank you so much, Andy. Thank you. I think you mentioned that we'll be taking a hiatus and we'll be coming back in the fall.
Definitely.
So, Terrence, we may take you up on getting that DNA test to find out who we are. I already feel I come from.
It's always good. You might discover that you're
Egypt, where the pyramids. I came straight from that pyramid building.
I see.
Oh yeah. So again, I want to thank everyone for tuning in. Thank all our followers and the people who've been commenting. Thank you so much. And see you in the fall. Thank you, everyone. Have a good evening.
Have a wonderful evening. And thank you, guys.
Bye.
Thank you all again, and we're out.
What is knowledge? And how much of it must we acquire in order to better our lives? What makes some forms of knowledge seemingly more advantageous than others? What fuels this desire to learn and to know and to understand? And how much of what we learn is actually applied to the bettering of our lives? Is it necessary to know in order to grow? Join us, a group of former Guyanese high schoolers and our special guests, as we chat about the things we need to know and about education and the process of learning in the tech age. This is The Trending Mind, Friday